3.6 magnitude earthquake struck an area in North Texas. It is the strongest tremor there in 5 years. No damage or injuries were reported, but locals have been emotionally shaken by it. It's not everyone blaming Mother Nature for it either, as we're reporting. Some scientists say that the drilling in nearby fracking wells is what's causing these quakes. In fact, the area has been hit by more than a dozen tremors this month alone. It's seen more earthquakes, in fact, since fracking began there in 2008 than during the previous 4 decades combined. One Texas resident in the affected area shared his experience with us a bit earlier.
We had like 3 earthquakes that day. One was a 2.5, then a 2.8, and then the 3.6. And it sounded like a sonic boom, and then the house started shaking. And we did have some damage, just minor, just a little crack in the sheetrock. My wife was having panic attacks about it. I talked to one lady, and she has a pier and beam house instead of a slab house, slab foundation like we have. And her house started shaking off, and she thought their house was going to cave in. They were really concerned about it.
Let's take a minute to remind ourselves how this controversial process of fracking works. A well is drilled to over 1,000 metres down into the ground. There, a mix of water and sand, as well as tons of dioxins called fracking fluids, are pumped in, creating fissures that release the natural gas deposits. But that's the problem. The harmful chemicals used for fracking then can accumulate in the soil and result in contamination of the water and the water table. The toxins also evaporate and cause air pollution too. It's a double whammy. There's a growing movement to ban the process of the energy industry's latest fad to tap into lucrative fossil fuel deposits. Some activists say fracking is even more hazardous indeed than actually burning oil and gas in the first place.
There are much better alternatives at our disposal, and we don't need fracking whatsoever. And not only that, I mean, people said to me that it's a transition fuel. Evidence shown in America from the leakages from all the wells that they've done there is that there's up to 3 to 7.5% of leakage of methane gas into the atmosphere. Methane is a lot more potent greenhouse gas than what CO2 is. So, there's a case to be said it's actually a more harmful form of energy than burning coal in power stations.
Well, let's also hear, shall we now, from anti-fracking campaigner Andy Chyba from the Wales Green Party in the UK there. Hi, Andy. Evening to you. What steps has your party taken against fracking, then?
Well, we're the only party in the UK that's currently got an explicit policy looking to outlaw this fracking activity. All the other parties are pretty much sitting on the fence, other than, of course, the Tories, who are actively promoting it at the moment.
Is it really as serious and bad as I've been saying there and pointing out on that graph? I mean, how much of a danger is it, or is it being slightly blown out of proportion here, as far as you see it?
I don't honestly. Well, some aspects of it probably have been blown out of proportion a little bit, but the scale of the issues range from the very micro level all the way up to the global level. I mean, the images of gas being burnt in people's taps from gas lamps and so on is probably done as a bit of a disservice. Not to say that can't happen, but it can happen for all sorts of other reasons. But the issues that you've already mentioned about contamination of water supplies, once aquifers are contaminated, they're contaminated pretty much forever. They're virtually impossible to remedy, and therefore that's a very serious issue. The issue regarding health consequences that Dr. Theo Colborn's investigated thoroughly. That's an immediate and definite danger. Then you're then talking about the whole issue of the energy policy of the country. Your previous speaker was talking about the fact that all that's happening is by pursuing these extreme energies, we're putting off the imperative to get to grips with the renewable energies that we're going to have to rely on sooner or later. Well,
the French government obviously agrees with the concerns that you've got. They banned the practice back in 2011, didn't they? Was that a difficult step for them to carry through?
Well, it's a difficult step in the sense that you've got some of the biggest companies on the planet looking to sort of put pressure on the governments of the UK and across the world to allow them to sort of squeeze these last drops of fossil fuels out for short-term profit motives, right? And that's literally all it is. I mean, there's no way. I mean, the amount of energy it takes to extract this energy in itself means that the contribution to the overall energy budget of the country is pretty minimal. It's absolutely farcical. When you look at the amount of equipment and resources that go into extracting this gas, it's got to be just for a short-term profit motive.
Yeah. I mean, I've been talking to a couple of people who've literally been affected by it. Boreholes have appeared in their houses. They've turned outside their houses. They've turned their water on. Gas has come out of their water taps. It's scary. But why hasn't the UN, for instance, caught on to this? Is there anywhere along the line a global ban being proposed, or is that just not on the cards?
No, in the United Nations, the GEA, I can't remember quite what that stands for now, but there's a report that they published November last year, 12 months ago, almost exactly, which basically confirmed everything that I've been saying, that we've been saying since the outset here, in terms of the fact that there's not the vagaries of deep geology are such that even the greatest experts on the planet cannot say for certain how it's going to react to the amount of pressure that's been put into them, the amount of liquids that have been pumped into faults that we don't even know whether they exist or not. I mean, what's happened in Texas is that the injection into the ground of the fluids has brought to light faults and fractures that we had no idea even existed. Because,
and how toxic is this stuff that they pump in? I mean, I kind of highlighted it just now, but how bad is it?
Well, one of the myths about fracking fluid is that one of the things about it is there's no such thing as a proprietary fracking fluid. Every single job requires a different mix. Every single stage of the fracking process requires a different mix. So what you've got publicity stunts from companies whereby in the initial stages of fracking, you don't really need to use much in the way of chemicals at all. And you've had stunts from these executives drinking, stuff to the cameras and so on. But what happens is that the further down you go, the more extreme you need to get, the subsequent stages of it, you need more and more chemicals to make the damn thing work, right? And that's when they start sneaking in all sorts of nasty additives that are well documented, with all sorts of nasty consequences from them.
Ultimately, of course, the public want cheap fuel. They want to put fuel in the cars, they want to warm their houses, etc., 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 and they want it as cheap as possible. It's an uphill battle you're up against, isn't it?
Well, it's an uphill battle against the spin that the Tories and so on and the other vested interests are putting on it. I've just had solar panels put on my roof in the last few days. I've now got a 40% drop in my electricity consumption during daylight hours. Right? That doesn't get much cheaper than that. Right? It's a one-off investment. Renewable energies provide virtually free energy. Right? It takes a lot of initial investment and so on. Energy security and cheap energy prices are far more likely to come about in the long run through pursuing renewable energies than they are from these extreme forms of fossil fuel exploitation.
Andy Chyba, thanks so much for your thoughts there. Much appreciated.